What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, let's clap it up.
Hey, what are we clapping for?
We are clapping. We are, dudes don't need an excuse to clap. We'll clap for literally anything. We have a tiebreaker system in the SEC. It is
your favorite thing.
Look, I have done everything I can possibly do this offseason to bang the drum that before the start of this college football season, wherein there will not be divisions to settle who goes to an SEC championship, that we should probably have this whole tiebreaker thing figured out before a couple of teams are 6-2 and 7-1, and we're flipping a coin or something like that. The SEC has a tiebreaker. If you haven't seen what it is, I won't go through this line by line. Just know that F is a random draw of the tied teams. We need to get to F. We need to get to F, Will, is what I'm saying.
Oh, we're back to doing math. Look, I didn't like math when they put the letters in math. And then now I went to art school. I got a job. I haven't seen a letter in math in a long time. Now you're telling me I got to solve for a variable F?
No. This is simply picking into a hat and picking out a team that would get to go to the SEC championship. I'm sure there would be no sort of tampering. This would not be a Patrick Ewing NBA draft situation at all. And this would be totally above board. It's not going to get to F. I only had 5 things in my tiebreaker system. They really did not want to go to the college football playoff rankings, nor should they, because it's weird to have out-of-conference things impact a conference championship. So I'll actually salute them for that. They could have just taken mine and gone with it. It's relatively similar, but I really hope that it comes down to F. That's all I want to see.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing, right? About like being more neutral and like kind of like we've talked about, started to do that more at the pod. It's like just rooting for good games. It's like, yeah, you kind of want every team to be kind of like mid plus or good minus so that they're good games, because nobody was having fun when it was Bama and Georgia beating up on everybody. So let's get down to like G. Let's do it.
There is no G. There is just F. But if there is somehow a tie after F,
right?
I think G is just a game of steal the bacon between the two head coaches.
There we go. I love that. Yeah.
The XFL did it initially, realized very, very quickly, oh my gosh, guys are getting hurt left and right. We should not do this instead of a coin toss. But in a situation like this, yes, head coaches steal the bacon. Let's just put that in there. You don't even have to put it in there as G, just a little bit like a double asterisk or something like that. And then in the very, very bottom, in the smallest of fine print, head coaches will play steal the bacon to settle the tie. That's
clip art of shirtless Bert. Got it.
Yes. Bring Beautiful. Bert back to the SEC just so that he can compete and steal the bacon. You can have, how about someone
celebrity
step in
shot
for you? Yeah, like celebrity shot, something like that. Maybe it's best of 3. You know, if you're doing like rock, paper, scissors or something, like you're not doing just one match. So same with steal the bacon. Best of 7. Let's do it. All right. Plan for today. Cole Cubelic in a little bit. We're going to discuss just a bunch of SEC storylines. We go all over the place with Cole because we are in the actual final countdown for this SEC season starting. We are, as of this recording, not 9 days away. We are 7 days away, 1 week from today. How about it, Will? That is a good thing. So in honor of that, I thought, you know what, with all the questions about this new era of college football and all the unknowns, new playoff system, what's it going to look like with revenue sharing, this, that, and the other. I thought, you know what, let's do Pitch Me, why 2024 will be the best college football season ever. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. But Will, first, let's start with some burning questions for week 1. We're kind of doing, and these are SEC burning questions, by the way, we're kind of doing like a 2-part preview for week 1. Next Wednesday afternoon is when our week 1 preview pod will drop. We're going to be recording that on most of that on Tuesday, but it'll drop on Wednesday. If you're new to the show, by the way, thank you. Thank you for coming along. We hope to be able to keep your interest throughout this entire season, no matter how it goes for your specific team. But maybe you need a little bit of a refresher. We break down in our preview pods all the SEC games involving core 4 matchups with some sort of like fictional over-under and then a non-fictional pick against the spread. And then we do a non-SEC game for lock of the week. We don't dig into every single matchup because if you really need me to break down how I think Chattanooga, Tennessee is going to go. We've got bigger problems. We'll talk about it, obviously, if it doesn't go as expected. But I realize there are still things for week one specifically that I want to be able to discuss that just aren't necessarily related to the 5 core 4 matchups that we'll have in the SEC, which, in case you forgot, Clemson, Georgia, Virginia Tech, Vandy, Florida, Miami, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and then Sunday night, the game that you will be at, LSU, USC in Vegas. First of all, do you want to be at that game more than Lincoln Riley? Because the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah, so far, that's the one piece of data that I'm really clinging, to near and dear my heart. That Lincoln Riley is just fighting and clawing just as hard as he tried to get out of, the SEC. He has now tried to claw out of this matchup, and he's headed to the Big Ten. So it just feels like he's 0-2 now.
This is true. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to do burning questions, and it's mostly going to be on kind of the other games. We'll go a little bit conference wide with it, but rather than just digging into some of these specific matchups, we'll kind of just talk big picture with the SEC. So let's do that. Got 7 of these, probably actually more that we'll get to. First question, which young SEC quarterback looks most overwhelmed? I think the candidates would include Jackson Arnold, Nico Iamale. Wow, I almost Will. I just stopped myself.
We were like 31 and 0 before that.
All right, we didn't get through the entire last name. We paused. We had a reset. Call it a balk. Whatever.
Nico, Mr. Spelling Bee correspondent, buddy, you're out of here. That was the official guess.
That's true. Look, I'll take the L. Nico Iamaleava, and then Lenore Sellers. Those are the guys. Not even in pre-draft seasons. You could, I guess, include some others if you want in that conversation of like, oh, well, Garrett Nussmeier is football young, and I guess you could say Brock Vandegrift is really football young, Connor Wigman, football young. But those are the guys that I'm kind of wondering about heading into year 2 who are going to be starting in their first games of the season. Jackson Arnold, Nico obviously got a little bit of a head start on that, being able to start in their respective bowl games. But the good news for all 3 of those guys, Will, is that they're all at least 3 touchdown favorites. If they somehow lose, we're having probably a different discussion about all of them. And the spin zone for a close win in which the offenses don't look particularly good is pretty obvious. Like, I mean, we've all done this before. Well, the packages are basic. You tried to keep it simple. No big deal. Just a season opener. Better days are ahead. Definitely some truth to that, by the way. I'm not dismissing that. But this should, in theory, be a confidence builder for all 3 of those guys. You want scores early. You want to be able to have a relaxed crowd in the second half. I think that's such an underrated thing at the college football level. It's like, how in baseball we always talk about when a pitcher has stressful innings and how not all pitch counts are created equal. Like, if a guy has like runners on second and third for the vast majority of the time, and he throws, 65 pitches in his first 4 innings, then, obviously it's a little bit different. But I think there's a chance that if there is a young quarterback that's going to look a little bit overwhelmed at times, I think Lenore Sellers could be that guy of that group, at least. That's kind of the obvious choice.
Yeah.
I mean, he's never thrown a pass against FBS competition. Like, we like Lenore Sellers. He may or may not look like Horace Grant. That's a positive. Yeah. But I would expect him to look a little bit, I don't know, rusty's not the right word, but like a guy that's figuring some things out.
There you go. For rusty, it's like you were polished and you got rusty. This is just he never had the polish.
Yeah, and raw is probably the wrong word because I don't know. Like, maybe there could be some things that are raw, but it takes a little bit of time. It takes a guy getting his feet wet, and I think that Arnold and Iamaleava have better surroundings probably, and the fact that they've already gotten that first start out of the way is big. But we have legit questions about the receiver room at South Carolina. We have questions about the offensive line. We have questions about a lot of places with that team. It would not surprise me at all if there was a bit of a feeling out process, and especially if South Carolina can't do what I expect Tennessee and Oklahoma to be able to do, which is turn to the run game. If the passing game looks like crap early, just run the football, and you're going to be able to win that battle. South Carolina might have a little bit of a tougher time winning that battle. So I'm not predicting Sellers is going to struggle, but I do wonder if one of those 3 guys will kind of look like, as you would say, unpolished.
Yeah, I think, and as a kind of a first-time starter it's better to kind of have like or a first time head coach in like DeBoer's case. It's definitely better to have one of those cake day games, as we say, to start off with, right? And I think that for as much as you can have the Billy Napier effect, where you come in and beat Utah week 1, it's like this guy is Steve Spurrier 2.0. Often it is better to kind of get your stuff under you, be ready to go. And so I think Sellers. I think the big thing is just finding that confidence. We talked about it, ad nauseum with the offensive line not being great. We always talk about the bad offensive lines coming back is not good until they get better. So I think that the thing with Sellers is going to be just building those reads, getting comfortable in the offense. I think that we do have a little bit of a not a disconnect, but I think we both have different takes on Dowell Loggins right now. Like I think that he had a little bit better talent. When you talk about our boy deep ball king, Xavier Legette, I think that he was pretty underrated even without Juice Wells last year. So this is really going to be a prove it season for everyone, right? Because I mean, for Beamer, obviously, year one or like the Clemson year, the year with the Tennessee and Clemson wins in 2022 was kind of seen as a positive, despite the record still not being great, or where they would like to see that South Carolina. Last year was undoubtedly a step back. We saw that at media days. So I think that this is really a prove it year for everyone. It's a prove it year for the OC, for the quarterback, and for Beamer, who probably could have gone out and gotten someone out of the transfer portal like Rocket Sanders at the running back position, but he's sticking with this guy, and he's a different type of guy. Sellers is going to play quarterback in a way that no one else is in the SEC, and that's to Beamer an edge, right?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about like sometimes, like as much as we want these headliner games to be able to start off, if DJ Uiagalelei starts off his career as a starter against Georgia State instead of Georgia, I think his career goes differently. I'll stand by that. There's no way I can definitively prove it, but I just kind of do. And this is important in that regard for these young signal callers. Okay, you mentioned him before, Kalen DeBoer. What's the vibe of Kalen DeBoer's debut? 31-point favorite against Western Kentucky, but it's still an ESPN game at night. Plenty of eyeballs will be on Alabama. Does the offense gel from the jump? Does it seek to get the passing game a bit more work than usual than you would think for a game like this, knowing that they're going to need to execute DeBoer's offense the way that it's intended to be run? Are Bama fans going to be kind of wondering if like Nick Sheridan just looks like Tommy Reese 2.0? Like, are we going to get that? Does the Alabama defense without Saban struggle? Like, what's that unit going to look like? Because I'll tell you what, if TJ Finley, if he is carving up this Bama defense, that's probably not the best sign, because TJ Finley, in case you haven't been tracking this, is facing Bama with his third different team. He is on his fourth team, but he has only faced Bama. This will be with his third team. It's a shame that we couldn't have gotten a Bama-Texas State matchup, because TJ Finley facing Bama every single year with a different team would have just been, would have been perfect. We're unfortunately robbed of that. Look, I want to know how comfortable it is for Alabama, for Kalen DeBoer specifically. I actually think this is going to sound like a against the grain take. I think Bama fans are so sick of hearing everyone say that they're going to overreact to Kalen DeBoer's shortcomings that we're going to see them become, in a weird way, super defensive of him, at least to the outside world, right? They might have their moments internally where they're wondering where the answers are going to come from, if this transition is going to work. Maybe that's a bad take, but I do think that they will try and show.
Enough. We need to make a term for this, right? Because I talk about
it's great.
We've seen this over and over again with Venables, Billy Napier, right? With all the the Lincoln Riley stuff with USC. We've seen it where you hire the new guy and you're like, the old guy was here. We saw Tua give a quote about this, about Brian Flores the other day, about how things were a disaster under Brian Flores. They're great under Mike McDaniel, but it's a one-game difference, like one-win difference. So, I think we need to find new coach blindness, or whatever it would be called, because I think you're so right. And I'll say this too. I'm going to give Kalen DeBoer some advice about the South, because I think he's done a great job handling everything so far. He doesn't have to follow this. Obviously, DeBoer, here's what you need to do. You need to beat this team. You need to cover the spread. You're going to cover the spread. People are going to start leaving the game. After the game, one of your first things you're going to say is do your best Nick Saban and be like, hey, I thought the last guy told you not to leave in the fourth quarter. All right, that is going to get the guys so fired up after week one that you could go, look, you could win 6 or 7, 8 games this year and they'll still love you, because that's what you got to do. Because I started to think, Nick Saban used to be a little bit mean to those Bama fans. He used to talk about the entitlement. He used to do all that. If you're DeBoer, you can't just come out with your hat in your hand and say, please accept me. You already got the new coach stuff. Just come out and say, hey, I saw some empty seats there in that fourth quarter. Should we have won by less?
Just, wow, lean right into it. Go full Saban from the jump.
Yep.
Yeah, that would certainly get some reactions. It definitely would. I think they'll stay. I think Bama fans will stay, and I do think that they will be. Gosh, you're exactly right. There's got to be a term for this because it's a mix. It's like not quite blindness, but there's a bit of where is this message coming from? Because if it's coming from your buddy, a fellow fan, or something like that, you probably nod your head and you're like, yeah, it's exactly right. But then if somebody national says it, and if someone goes on TV and says this about your team, it's like, well, how dare you? Like, no, you're absolutely wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. You're an outsider. That's just a lazy take. There's a name for it. It's somewhere. Let's workshop that. That's our college football 24 to-do list, is to come up with a term for that.
It's the two, right? It's the new coach, quote unquote, blindness. We're not sticking with that, but it's the old coach amnesia, where it's like, we forgot that Dan Mullen won the SEC East. We forgot that, these people like Manny Diaz looked great, made Tyler Van Dyke look awesome, and then Mario took him, made him look terrible. Now it's Tyler Van Dyke's fault. I think we got to find both of those. But anyway.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see kind of how that plays out for DeBoer. Very much mom spaghetti time for him in this opener.
Yeah.
Question number 3. Which opposing quarterback looks darn near unstoppable against an SEC team? Candidates. Cade Klubnik against Georgia. Nope. Not going to happen. TJ Finley against Bama. Never.
He's done it before. No, just kidding.
He has not done it before. He has definitely not.
That game, I felt like I could have subbed myself in and scored. He had so many chances.
Oh, my gosh. How many overtimes did they play in that game?
Too many.
4 overtimes? Oh, that was so bad.
I'm so glad Nick Saban's gone, man. He won 100% of those games, it feels like.
I lost one to LSU. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, that's fair. But they went for 2.
True.
They realized he was going to win that game if they kept it going.
Very true. Cam Ward at Florida, Riley Leonard at A&M, and Miller Moss against LSU. Actually, the boring answer, if we want to be technical with this, is probably Kyron Drones against Vandy. I probably pronounced his first name wrong. I apologize. Probably Kyron, but Kyron Drones sounds so much better. Way, way better. He's probably going to light up the Vandy defense if we're being real, but nobody really cares about that specific answer and the ins and outs of that. The answer that everyone expects is Miller Moss against LSU, because
here we go again.
you already have 3 Zachariah Branch touchdowns as a sunk cost as an LSU fan, so that's good. Maybe
it's like I admitted I thought LSU was going to lose this game, and since your goal has been to get me kicked out of Krista's tailgate, and I respect that about you.
I think you have very realistic expectations for this, and I think you're just prepared to be hurt, and we need that sometimes. Like, look, I think this USC offense is still going to probably be extremely prolific. I totally spaced on the addition of Woody Marks because I forgot. I was thinking, oh yeah, he was at Washington, and then he made the decision after the DeBoer move to Alabama, so he's going to be their primary tailback. They're probably going to throw to him a bunch in that game. Maybe he's going to catch a swing pass, and then 6 LSU defenders are going to whiff trying to tackle him. Like, there could be moments of that. Will, what would you consider to be a satisfying LSU defensive showing against Miller Moss?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just very interesting to see what this game will be. I mean, I think it's going to be high scoring regardless. I think if we can keep him around 2 passing touchdowns, that we find. That's just how the game works now. Like, if you go there are some games where you're like, oh, we shut this guy down, he had 3 touchdowns, right? Because it's just modern football. But yeah, I think it's about DBs not blowing assignments and falling down. I think if they're allowing defensive scores, that's fine. But we can't have, we've had in last year where guys are like looking at each other like, is this man zone up? There he goes.
Yeah, if that's the case, just fast forward to the end of this season, LSU fans, or just
that's the opposite of how things have worked. You have to fast forward to week 3, and then you start getting the hopium back. Yeah, you got to enjoy the rest of the season. Week 1's just the preseason.
Sim defense, just do that. Like playing college football 25 or something like that. A lot of people doing that. Just sim defense, just play offense. I think a lot of people are assuming that Cam Ward is going to light up Florida. I'll save some of that discussion for next week, but I'm not there yet with that specific matchup. And that's not to say I don't like Cam Ward as a player, but just on the road, I looked at that forecast for what it's going to be, the 10-day, 91 degrees slated for that game in Gainesville. And just with all those new pieces, I think that's more of a struggle than some of those other matchups. And I think they're going to try and run the ball a bit more with Damian Martinez. Riley Leonard could have a lot of success this year at Notre Dame, but he's going against the defensive-minded head coach that saw him every day for the last 2 years. You've got new starters at both offensive tackle spots with Joe Alt and Blake Fisher off to the NFL. Should be an awesome atmosphere at Kyle Field. College game day, obviously going to be in the house. Maybe Leonard overcomes that, but I don't think he'll be lighting up that defense when we know the strength of A&M is that defensive line. So to me, I don't necessarily look at that as like an obvious one. I'll be super impressed with Riley Leonard if he navigates that and he kind of quiets that crowd. That would be really no small feat, I think, especially considering the Elko dynamic. But yeah, Miller Moss is the most obvious choice for this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm taking solace in imagining Coach O saying Miller Moss's name. Miller Moss. That would be very fun. But yeah, I'm not picking any Miami quarterback to do anything. I mean, great job for them just hiring this whole staff of Cajuns and then keeping them all together at Miami. But yeah, they got the same OC from last year who was not any good. So again, I'm in wait and see mode for the future in Miami. So I think if I had to pick one of these, it's probably going to be Miller Moss, but that's because either the defenses are good or the quarterback themselves is not that good or the coach is stupid in Miami's case.
Could be, yeah, all the above. Could play out. What are we on? Number 4, number 5, whatever this is. Will Ole Miss's sideline hoop survive opening weekend?
That's a good one.
I don't think so. I don't think Furman's going to be able to stop that. We are basically a JJ McGee scoop and score away from seeing that sucker look like it's early 90s Shaq all over it. That thing is not going to survive. That backboard is flimsy unless they get the real hoop out there like they did for the dunk contest. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a hoop that is able to last particularly long. On a more serious note, I'm excited to see how Juice Wells looks. Excited to see how a lot of these guys coming off of injury-shortened seasons look. You know, Juice Wells, Rocket Sanders, Andrell Anthony at Oklahoma, who was their leading receiver before he went down. Zy Alexander, hopefully for your sake, he's going to be out there, at least with a pulse in that game. All of those guys, I think, have all SEC upside. What does it look like for them in the opener? But yeah, more importantly, there is the Ole Miss sideline hoop. I think they're doing that this year. I think they're still doing that because if you did the dunk contest in the spring game, it'd be weird to suddenly take that away, right?
Yeah, I think that like it's just interesting seeing Lane try to like manage this, right? Like we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm waiting if he goes serious mode. I don't know. It's like he doesn't want to be the wild and crazy guy. But I do think also like Furman's tough because it's an FCS team or like it's not FCS. I don't even know what it's called.
It is an FCS. Yeah.
There
FCS,
we go. It's still FCS. It's not, whatever. So point being like, you don't want to look like you're really like running up the score on them and having too much fun. But if you bring it out against the SEC team, it's disrespectful. So like you might as well just try it. See, at least you're not debuting it against the SEC team.
Yeah. I don't know how many FU jokes Lane is going to make, but plentiful. I don't think that's going to be the over under. Oh yeah, we're not going to be doing over unders for that one. But the over under is definitely high. Guarantee that. Okay, will we get a significant week 1 injury? Hope not. Not trying to predict those, but if you've got a healthy SEC running back, hug them, put them in bubble wrap, hold them, because man, it's been a really rough fall camp so far in that department. And you can totally see something like that happening. It sucks, obviously, if it happens in a blowout as well. But yeah, I mean, the significant week 1 injuries they are just a brutal pill to swallow. Last year, South Carolina lost 2 offensive starters in the opener, including Juice Wells. I think they lost an offensive lineman as well. Like that was bad.
I think Juice Wells got hurt in the Georgia game, which would have been the SEC opener.
He was coming back against Georgia.
Oh, you're so right. He got hurt early.
And then he got hurt again against Georgia.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's never good when you're aggravating an injury in mid-September. But yeah, look, that proved to be kind of a theme throughout last season. So not predicting anything like that to happen, but it feels like there's always at least one of those that we're going to be reacting to.
Yeah, good news for LSU. They have Josh Williams, who's made of concrete. One thing about him is you can't kill him. Bad news, they're playing against Bear Alexander. So
we'll see. We'll see about
a couple
that.
of cheap shots in there.
Yeah, I like Caleb Jackson too.
Yeah, me too. That's my guy. Yeah.
My buddy Ben, who did like a dynasty draft in this like 30-team college football.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's real deal. It was like one of those long drafts too, where he'd like text me once a week, being like, "Here's what the board looks like," and I was like, I think I had him take Caleb Jackson pretty early in that one. Just saying, like, and I was actually like round 4 or 5. Everybody was off the board in that one. I think I talked about this before. His first pick was Nico because like the running backs were few and far between that were available because like guys had already been kept before, and I think he was like pick 25 or something like that out of 30. So yeah, nobody cares about that. Anyway, speaking of South Carolina and losing those guys in the opener like they did last year, which team will I want to do a 180 on after the opener? Last year, that was South Carolina. Picked them to go 8-4, watch the areas that they struggled in that opener, mainly on the offensive line. Very quickly realized that 8-4 was going to be a cold take, and that was not going to happen. Which team will make me pivot, either good or bad? Doesn't have to necessarily be like, oh my gosh, I was way too high on this team. Georgia losing to Clemson would make me really worried about handling that schedule, which obviously includes 3 preseason top 6 teams that they'll face on the road. Or I guess, top 6, because that's Ole Miss, Bama, and Texas. That would make me really worried, even though I don't necessarily anticipate that. I think Georgia wins that convincingly. But, like if Florida comes out and just destroys Miami, I don't know that the takeaway should be that 8-4, 9-3 is imminent, like Steve Spurrier was saying. But I do wonder if that'll just be more of, hey, Florida's not going to go 5-7 again. Billy might be in position to be able to navigate this. And then the least surprising news of all, the takeaway from that scenario would be everyone got ahead of themselves with Miami. Of course. Stop me if you've heard this before. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most interesting scenario would certainly be Clemson being Georgia. I think we're 90% sure that's not going to happen, but it would be very funny because I think it would ensure 2 things. Georgia would win a national title if they found a way to lose to Dabo. I think we would see a version of Kirby that was so angry, like Nick Saban would want to go coach on that staff just to feel the rage in the rooms. I think he would just sit there, come off the golf course, and just soak it in like Emperor Palpatine, put his hand on the wall, feel the rage enter him, and go, yes, my son. I think that would be cool. The other part of it is that would ensure one of the worst Dabo losses we've ever seen is coming later in the year, because that man has never put together a wire-to-wire season without like a quarterback that you could see coming from a mile away. So actually, I think from an entertainment perspective, that would be fire.
Yeah, I was going to say 2018, wire to wire. Like, that definitely.
That was Trevor Lawrence, though. That's the thing. There's no Trevor Lawrence on this team.
The key caveat with a quarterback that, a little bit more established. And I guess Trevor Lawrence wasn't quite established as a true freshman, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, to do it out of nowhere with a quarterback that we have questions about in Cade Klubnik, yes, that would definitely feel very, very surprising of all the week 1 developments that could play out. But also something, like if Auburn looks terrible against an FCS team, that would certainly make me feel worse about predicting 8-4 with Peyton Thorne as the most improved SEC player. Wouldn't feel great about that. The beauty and chaos of college football is that an 8-month offseason, all of that discussion that we can have, it can go up in smoke with 60 minutes of football in ways that college basketball can't do that, NBA can't do that. Not even the NFL really does that. Although last year, my Chicago Bears made a really good attempt by their week 1 showing against the Packers that was just horrendous. And you were like, oh, okay, this still is very, very far away. But yeah, for the most part, college football holds that title and nobody really comes close.
Yeah, I think that I'm with you about the Miami thing. I think that, I'm just saying when Auburn inadvertently has some whatever weird loss, I just want to have the same treatment. I'm not speaking ill of our guy, Robert Griffin III, who did, is no longer with ESPN, and has just been a really good sport about that. But we got to have the same treatment towards Cam Coleman that we had towards Luther Burden if Auburn's offense starts struggling. All right, if we're going to telestrate him and start predicting where he's going to go, all right, I don't want that to be exclusive to Mizzou. If we're just going to jump on Mizzou where they can't get a generational receiver involved,
I would argue Cam Coleman also has to delete all mentions of Auburn off of his Instagram for us to go with that, because that was part of the thing with Luther.
That's
Burden.
Actually a good point. Yeah.
All right, last one, most important one. Will Bobby Petrino smash a headset in the opener? I mean, we got big news this week, Will. Huge, huge news. Bobby Petrino will be on the sidelines and not in the booth this year. When I saw that from my guy, John Neighbors, I fist pumped. Lefty fist pumped, actually, which is, everybody knows, is the better fist pump. Robert Patrick was back in our SEC Lives last year. But I swear to you, and I don't have anything to actually prove this. I might have to talk to some people and figure this out. Maybe statute of limitations is up now that Jimbo Fisher is no longer at Texas A&M. But I swear to you, A&M had some sort of a deal worked out with every production crew where they said, you can show Bobby in the booth, but please don't get the best possible angle. Make him half shaded like he's in witness protection or something.
Yep.
Whatever you do, make sure that we cannot read lips or anything like that. And maybe we would all just see a clip of him for 10 seconds and then see that he's MFing Jimbo to death or something like that. They did not want to put that into the world. And I hold that against them because I needed that. I really missed out on that content. So this year, Robert Patrick is on the sidelines. Headsets beware. No excuses for any production crew to miss out on that. I need that back in my life. You know what else we're going to get for the first time too? And maybe I'm sleeping on this one a little bit, but coaches spiking tablets. That's coming. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
We need to get the great folks at ESPN, ABC, SEC Network, you know who they are. Make sure that when a quarterback sits down with a tablet, get those cameras locked in. Because if there's a chance of a spike, of a tablet spike, I want it. I need it. Maybe it's a coach trying to figure out how to work the tablet and they're like hitting the thing like it's a vending machine or something like that.
Yep.
All of that. That's going to provide a lot of great moments. No context college football, Sickos committee. I'm sure they'll be all over that stuff. But if Petrino spikes a headset or a tablet in a season opener against Arkansas Pine Bluff in Little Rock, maybe he's just going to spike a headset for having to play that game in Little Rock. Maybe that's not the best sign, or at the very least, it's a sign that we're in for quite the year, and Bobby Petrino is going to be appointment viewing.
Look, I think it would be kind of a better, because like something's gone disastrously wrong if that happens during this game. I think it would be better to highlight the game we think it will happen in. And for me, that's a very easy answer, which is just a short wait. Week 2 at Oklahoma State.
Okay.
I think at Oklahoma State, we're going to have Mike Gundy on one side, Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino at the other side. There will be a viral moment. I would bet my house that one of those coaches will be losing their dang minds on the sideline. So I'm very excited. I will be locked into that on September 7th.
Does Gundy wear a headset with the mullet? I don't know.
That's a great question. Yeah, I feel like he kind of has to, right?
I think he does. But you know what? I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. Yeah, look, the possibilities are endless though. They really are. And adding another piece of required equipment to the mix is going to make for just the best type of content. And I'm
yeah, he does. It poofs up the front like a Sopranos pompadour. I've seen this a ton. That's what it is.
That's right.
It looks kind of like Coach O actually with the headset on.
Yikes. I don't know if that's the best compliment. But yeah, those are burning questions for SEC play. In week 1, we will have, like I said, the second part of that preview next Wednesday that will be dropping. So let's talk some more week 1. Let's kick it to Cole. Great stuff with him. One of the most informed people that there is in this business. Great stuff from Cole Cubelic, as always. So here's Cole. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Cole Cubelic. Cole, settle a debate. Is the Iron Bowl a national rivalry?
It's not a debate. Go look at the ratings for it for the last decade plus. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's reasons that when you see national college football writers put their lists of best rivalry games or best rivalries together, it's towards or at the top of the list. So, yes, absolutely it is.
The discussion that Sam Acho, for whatever reason, decided to venture into at SEC Media Days, of all places, to be able to throw that take out there that the Iron Bowl wasn't a national rivalry and that the Red River rivalry was a national rivalry was just it was baffling in every single way. And the ratings point to, like, I'm not a big ratings police guy, but just because I think it's just like it can be a weird discussion. But the Red River rivalry isn't even played during rivalry week, so it doesn't have the competition of all of those other rivalry games. And the fact that the Iron Bowl still does better when everybody else is watching their team play against a rival, I mean, that's open and shut for me right there.
Hey, listen, we all fell in love with college football at different points in times for different reasons. And that's what makes college football great. We have our teams, conferences, rivalries, coaches, games, whatever, players. But there's an aspect of it that I do think it helps when you've experienced it. But I haven't experienced Red River, and I know that thing's great. I haven't experienced Ohio State, Michigan. I know that thing's great. But the Egg Bowl conversation is one that I don't anticipate a lot of people will be on my side with. Because I haven't really paid close attention to it or been around it. Surprisingly, there were a lot of people that were, calling me a college football casual for where I had the Egg Bowl, saying that they're not sure they had ever watched the Egg Bowl, which to call someone a casual and then admit that you did not watch a standalone college football game, the only game on, I don't really care who it is, there wasn't another option at that time, feels a little bit backwards, but hey, everybody's got their opinions.
Cole, you're the least casual college football fan I think I know. Like literally the least like you are the diehard to the point where you are breaking down film of a guy that you're probably not even going to be covering anytime soon on a 6 a.m. flight after you've just covered a Saturday night game.
Yeah, it's we try to get it all in. So it's like I tell Aaron Taylor every year, you need to put out a Joe Moore Award watch list with every single team, just all of them. Because between us all, I know we're going to watch them all. I'm going to try to get to all of them myself, but between our committee, I know we're watching every single team. So just list all of them, put every single one of them on there.
It's a good point. Yeah, and yeah, I did probably omit that part of it, and obviously you being heavily involved in the Joe Moore Award, that certainly speaks to why you're watching so many of these teams, and why you'll put these clips out there. Let's talk about those two teams in the Iron Bowl, though, because Alabama's offense, it feels like a total inverse of Washington's offense, at least in terms of what they do well versus what they don't do well. And I'm putting a little bit of blind faith in Kalen DeBoer to figure things out and to be able to adjust to this personnel. What's your confidence level in Alabama's offense?
It's pretty high, and I don't think your faith is blind at all, Connor, because he's proven, whether it has been with a Michael Penix, a guy that not a lot of people wanted, Jake Haener, a guy that not a lot of people had heard of. He's been able to do more with what a lot of people thought was less at quarterback inside of his offenses. Keep in mind, they go get Dylan Johnson from Mississippi State last year, and he was freaking hammer in that offense when they needed him to be, specifically later against Oregon the second time that they played, later in the season when they probably needed him. So I don't think it's just sort of a fun and gun, push the ball down the field offense. As a matter of fact, the large majority of their passing yards came outside the hash last year. So that's why I wasn't really worried about it when Gruff didn't come, or excuse me,
Grubb,
Grubb and Huff. I call them Gruff because they were together. When Grubb and Huff didn't come over, I wasn't overly concerned because it's Kalen's offense. I mean, Kalen can run it. Kalen can design it. Kalen can call it if he has to. So he can put all the pieces together. The thing that I would like about it most is you have an elite talent at quarterback, no matter what. If you want to run him 20 times a game, if you want to run him 2 times a game, if you want to throw the ball down the field, if you want to make it an intermediate, quick pass offense, he is an elite talent. There are not a lot of players at that position in college football that can do the things Jalen Milroe can do. I think it's a good group of receivers. With some of the youngsters, it might turn into a great group of receivers. But you've got a good, solid group of running backs. I think an underrated, undervalued, underdiscussed group of tight ends that can help you in a lot of different ways. In the middle of your offensive line should be great. So I think there's a lot of different ways they might be able to manage it this year and go out and be successful. But the key to that is going to be a quarterback that we know has the ability to take over games and go win a game by himself. Now, he doesn't need to play that style of ball, but they need to figure out exactly who's going to be the one that they can rely on, either on the perimeter or out of the backfield, whatever that is, and they kind of design it that way and go with it. So I think the offense is going to be fine. I think it'll probably play at a pretty high level for the majority of the season.
Parker Brailsford, one of those guys that followed Kalen DeBoer from Washington to Alabama, he takes over the center duties. Can he be the difference in Alabama making it to the playoff? Is he worth like a win potentially in the regular season?
I don't know if I would go that far just because Tyler Booker, Jaden Roberts are that good. So I might be able to get in there and give you a couple snaps and still be successful just because those guys are incredible. But he is a very good football player. He is technically solid. Fundamentally, he's very sound. He's not very big. He's not very powerful, but you don't always need that at that position, specifically when you have guys like that next to you. Tackle position is one that I think is a little bit more important right now. And there will be facets to this offense that make it a drop back offense, and you're going to need to protect. Caden Proctor not going through spring concerns me a little bit. You go to Iowa, you come back, you miss spring there, you miss spring here. So not really having been in pads since January 1 before you started fall practice, I'm a little worried about that and just what kind of steps you can realistically make. The battle at right tackle is still kind of ongoing. So we'll be able to see who that is probably game week and maybe find out actually during the game. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pritchett and Formby both play, but that's one that needs to be worked out. And that's where that group of tight ends I think could help you. But he's going to be fine. He's going to be solid. The thing is last year, I think people are getting a little bit ahead, just a smidge ahead on Brailsford because they felt like McLaughlin was that big of a liability last year. And the reality with that is Seth was fine. A lot of the snap issues, that was a combined effort. That wasn't just him. A lot of those were guys not being ready. A lot of those were miscommunication. And so if that gets buttoned up, it doesn't really matter who the center is. Like you've got to get that part of your offense repaired first. And maybe they figured out a way to simplify it. Maybe they're all on the same page, but it doesn't seem like it's been a problem so far through fall camp.
I went from thinking that Auburn had tons and tons of questions, and I still think that they do, but I have slowly talked myself into Auburn going 8-4 and Peyton Thorne being the SEC's most improved player with a full offseason in this offense, Hugh Freeze with more control over the offense. Obviously, everybody's talking about the pass catchers and the improvements there. And I thought the Keandre Lambert-Smith addition post-spring was really important for that group and what they need to be able to stretch the field. Is that a mistake buying into Auburn? Is that just an offseason of listening to Auburn optimism that's maybe gotten the better of me?
No. And I actually think that that's kind of the story of the majority of the league right now. Not all of it, but the majority is you could sit around and convince yourself that Oklahoma's going to make the playoff. You could sit around and convince yourself that A&M is going to be knocking on the door of the playoff. You could convince yourself that LSU is going to be in the playoff. And I know from a roster perspective, they're probably a little bit ahead of some of these teams we're talking about. You could convince yourself, some people, I could, that Florida is going to exceed people's expectations by a couple of games. Auburn, same way. I think that there is, Tennessee, I would almost throw into that mix, even though I think they're ahead of that. But this sort of gap between ceiling and floor is maybe collectively bigger than we've seen in a while. We usually know the 2 or 3 teams that are going to be at the top, and we know the 4 or 5 teams are going to be close to the bottom. I think the middle of the league is going to be very intriguing this year because Tennessee could make a massive jump. Missouri could make a massive jump. Ole Miss could make a massive jump. Texas could maybe fall down a little bit. Bama could fall down a little bit. And that's like 3 losses when we talk about that with Alabama. So I don't see Georgia really taking a step backwards, but those teams at the top, I think, could vary a little bit from where people think they can be. Either they're stealing at 10 wins, could maybe go undefeated, or think they're going to win 11, be in the playoff, could win 8 or 9. And I think Auburn's kind of in that similar conversation. It's just their ceiling's not as high because the roster's not as good as a lot of other those teams. I think, kind of like what you said about Peyton Thorne, people want to hate on him. People want to say that he's not a good quarterback, whatever it is. Peyton Thorne doesn't have to be Joe Burrow for this team to be good. The separation at the receiver position last year was pathetic. The ability to help the quarterback at that position just was not good. There weren't a lot of guys that were going out making plays that you can make, but maybe some people would say you're not supposed to make or you shouldn't make, but a really good receiver does. They didn't get a lot of those balls. So you didn't have a lot of help. The offensive line was not great at times. And I think people late in the year were able to focus in on the running game, and that's why he kind of got some things going with his legs. Now we know that's capable and that can be possible and that can happen with a little bit of a better offensive line and a totally different receiver room. And one of the mistakes I believe that we make when we talk about this team is, well, what if the receivers aren't that good? Or you can't put that much on these receivers we haven't seen. I think collectively with what you get in Robert Smith, Keandre Lambert-Smith, with what you get in potentially Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons and Bryce Kane and a couple of the others, it doesn't have to be A++++. Like it doesn't have to be LSU 2019. If it's B-, that's going to be miles ahead of what it was a year ago. You still have the most proven running back in the SEC and a quarterback that has a ton of college football experience that should be a lot more comfortable. And the design of the offense is not going to be going back and forth. That thing's not going to be on either side of a seesaw. It's going to be on the same side every week because Hugh is essentially taking it back and saying, I'm going to design it. Even if he doesn't call it, it's going to be his offense every week. And it wasn't that last year. So I think bigger concern on the defensive side is, do you have a real disruptor on that side of the football? Can the linebacker stay healthy? And a couple of pieces in the secondary, can the veterans either stay on the field, be healthy, and some of the younger guys really come in and help? So those are some of the things. Like the pass rushers are light outside of Keldrick Falk. Are those guys going to be able to hold up for an entire season? Are they going to be every down players? And if they are, how many games can they be every down players for how many series? Those are some of the things that I have a little bit more concerns about. I think the offense can be okay. I really do.
One of the things that I think we're seeing this offseason, we're seeing it with Hugh Freeze, we're seeing it with Sam Pittman, Clark Lee as well, in a different sort of way with kind of being his own defensive coordinator now, is head coaches who kind of sense the urgency and who are getting more involved. And it's not to say that they're automatically taking over primary play calling duties, but like Sam Pittman, you would think throughout his entire time at Arkansas, if you had said like, all right, what's your role going to be day to day? It's I'm going to be heavily involved in the offensive line. I'm going to be really hands-on with it. And we're going to have an offensive play caller. To now just be getting there going into what, is obviously a pivotal season for him. It is strange that it took getting to that low for him to realize, I need to get back to being hands-on with the offensive line. You've been in those rooms. How much does that stuff matter when a head coach with his pedigree in that area is willing to say like, all right, I got to be more hands-on. Otherwise this unit's like, we're just not going to get any better.
It's just really difficult for coaches to be that involved all the time now. I remember when Coach O was at LSU, he would go down to individual with the defensive line and he would take them through 2-3 periods of practice. All these guys want to do that. I mean, it's what they are at their core. They're teachers, and whatever position they started with, side of the ball they started with, they want to be involved in that. It's just there are a lot of things pulling you a lot of different directions. And if you're having to deal with boosters or donors or NIL or portal, and you don't get to spend the time in preparation for maybe a game plan that you want to, you're not going to go step in front of your offensive line coach and say all of a sudden, I'm the guy that's going to come down and tell these guys how to manage this front or do this, because you haven't really been there. I also think now too, Connor, it's not just about all the other things that are happening. Think about the coaching turnover that we're having. A lot of these coaches want their assistants to be happy. They want them to want to stay, because that staff continuity is tough to maintain in this day and age. So you go down there and start throwing elbows and getting people out of the way and saying, let me show you this. They're not going to want to be your position coach for long. They're going to try to find another job and try to get out of there. So I think there's a lot of really powers at work that pull these guys away from maybe inherently what they're best at, what they came up doing, how they cut their teeth. I mean, we talk about this a lot, like a guy like Hugh Freeze or Gus Malzahn. Why would you ever give up play calling? That's why you got to where you are. You weren't the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and then you came to coach Auburn football, or you weren't the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and became Tennessee's head coach. So now you can just lead anybody to do anything. You call plays. That's what you do. So go do that. But there's always going to be people that want you to answer the phone, come sit down in a meeting, go talk to somebody, go see somebody. And it's tough. And with where we actually are with player and coach turnover and the pressure that comes with it, it's that's why some of these new roles are popping up, and those guys are going to be making a bunch of money, because we're going to offset a lot of that responsibility to them.
Yeah, and I always kind of laugh when I see the fake like co-defensive coordinator duties. It's like that's very clearly a head coach that's trying to make one of his assistants happy, and they're not.
100%.
Like
put another title on it and give them more money. Yeah. Bobby Bowden was the king of this. He would have the assistant associate head coach for the defense, or the co-defensive coordinator and general manager of inside linebacker. I mean, he had, whatever it was, president of football administrative duties and linebacker coach. And so you put a title, that means they get more money, and, you give them a little bit of a raise and make them feel more important.
What's the most BS title you've ever held?
Probably salesman with a packaging company, because I had no idea what I was doing. And even though I knew sales, I didn't know that. So I probably shouldn't even have gotten that put by my name at all. So, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, for me, it's senior national columnist, which is my current title. That's not good. That's probably a different story for a different time. Yeah, look, I think
why are there never freshman, sophomore, and junior national columnists?
Junior columnist sounds,
or redshirt freshman columnists. Like why does everyone moves right to senior, and then they want to be there, not knowing that you graduate at some point, right? I mean, I guess writers get COVID too.
True.
And they can go for extra years.
True. Yeah. Look, I was given that title like 6 or 7 years ago by one of my former bosses, Christopher Smith. And I would get on the air with people and be like, "Oh, I thought you were like 45 or something." It's like, "No, I'm 25. I just have the title of a 45-year-old. It makes no sense." And I've just stuck with it. It's kind of a joke at this point.
The other good part about that for me is I haven't held many titles, period. So that's not a real hard question for me to answer, because there haven't been a lot of people that have, given me a title to be important enough to go do anything.
That's fair. Look, I think you're worthy of any title you get, in my opinion. How significant is Texas losing 2 running backs in fall camp? Because everybody knows the track record with Sark and the running backs and all that stuff, the starters they have back on the offensive line. But can this be something that holds Texas back from a national championship?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, let's go a step further, because it's not just, okay, you lose a running back, you lose 2 running backs, or your first and second running back. What is that now going to force you to be? Does that mean Quinn Ewers has to have 4 or 5 extra carries a game from a design standpoint? Keep in mind, too, how a lot of times we rotate running backs. You have your best pass protector. You have your best pass catcher. You have your short yardage backs. You have your 4-minute backs. So now do you have to alter how backs rotate? Do you have to alter the amount of carries that different guys get earlier in the season? Maybe now you have to give another running back an extra 10, 15 carries early in the season per game because you have to get him acclimated to real college football and get him an understanding of what's going to happen here and there. There might not be guys on that roster now that are as adept at catching the football. So the motion-based matchup offense, that's what Sark runs. Can it be as motion-based? And are you going to be able to move your pieces around and have enough versatility to get the matchups that you want, that you've always been a genius at creating? So it's easy to sit back and say, oh, running backs are a dime a dozen, and it's a position that's lost its value, and they don't have to go ground and pound and play that way, but it's everything else that comes with it and what it forces you to be in other ways. It's no different than when you lose your number one receiver, defenses change how they cover you. All of a sudden that safety attention is not going that way. The middle of the field's not as open as it once would be. We can be more pressure happy. Voila, totally different game plan. Or how you might have to protect if you have liabilities on your offensive line. You lose a guard or a center, and all of a sudden you have a liability where those guys were. You may change the way that you protect a little bit more, and that doesn't allow you as many 7-step drops. You can't challenge down the field as much. You can't go play action as much. So it's what it does to you in other ways outside of just saying, oh, 2 really talented running backs are now gone. Does that mean we can win all of our games?
I think Jaden Blue, the plan for him is going to be really different than what they anticipated, because I thought he was going to be used a lot in the passing game. I thought he was the guy that they felt comfortable with pass protection and stuff. And it just, you're right. Like it just feels like it changes everything. I'm kind of wondering, like, have you watched a guy like him yet? Like, have you had a chance? Because I'm sure you've watched a ton of Calvin Banks and stuff like that. Like, have you had a chance to like sit down and watch him? Because he's going to be in a very unique role, and especially with what we know going into the season. I think he's
physical. I think he's explosive. I mean, you don't recruit him there at that position if he's not capable and doesn't have the tools to be able to come in and help you. So, I think he's a guy that was going to get a lot of run this year anyway. It's just like you said, the role will now change. And what does that include that maybe it wasn't going to include before? And what does that now have to replace that maybe he wasn't going to have to be a part of before? Also think about special teams. Running backs are heavily involved in special teams: kick cover, kick return, punt cover, punt return. Those guys, that's one of those positions, kind of like inside, outside linebacker, safety, defensive end, tight end, that are viewed as hybrid athletic, sometimes extra physical, that you need on those special teams groups. So how does it change your numbers there? And that's something that has to be altered. So I think he's fine. I think he can be a good back. It's just it's more about the wear and tear, the physicality, and how much he's going to be asked to do early in the season and then throughout, as opposed to what it was going to be before.
I'll give you your choice if you answer whichever one of these you want. Maybe they're 2 of the same. You can either answer what's the take that you've gotten the most pushback on this offseason, or what's the SEC thing that you think is most concerning? I know you're talking about like Auburn not having that game record on defense. Like maybe it's one of those defenses among the contenders. Like I feel like I have a lot of concerns about the defenses that potential playoff teams could have. And Are they going to be able to travel on the road, like new coordinator, anything like that? What comes to mind for you?
The take that's gotten the most pushback has been at media days when I didn't have Alabama's offensive line in my top 5. And it's hilarious to me that a fan base that was absolutely on fire with their group for 90% of last season, let's just say outside the SEC championship game, which that group is about 80% why they won the SEC championship game, is now just 95 Nebraska. It's just everything just got repaired in a new offense with the new offensive line coach. By the way, we're great. Tyler Booker might be my favorite player to watch in college football. Love Jaden Roberts. Parker Brailsford's a really good player, but like I said before, Caden Proctor didn't practice before the fall. He had weight issues last year. Technically and fundamentally, is he going to be able to be a good tackle in college football? We don't really know that. And then you got to find somebody on the other side. It was hit and miss. It was up and down a little bit last year. So that concerns me that consistently they will be great. And I think they could easily be in that top 5 by the end of the season. But there are parts of it. Also, keep in mind, Brailsford missed a lot of the spring. So he kind of wasn't around that group. So how many snaps are they getting together as they enter this season, which those are limited in fall camp anyway? All that could go away. We just don't know. And there are some other groups that I feel a little bit more confident won't have to manage that and deal with that. The second part of your question, my biggest concern, honestly, Connor, I think is along the defensive line collectively. I couldn't tell you the last time that I really thought collectively all together that the offensive lines were ahead of the defensive lines going into a season in this league. I mean, it's Mississippi State has got 2. Ole Miss has got 1. Florida's got 3. Tennessee's got 2. Bama's got 6. Georgia's got 5. LSU has 4. It's not like that right now. It just isn't. There are not a lot of guys up front in this league that I would feel like I need to game plan around. James Pierce, yes, there's going to be part of our plan that has to do with him that is going to take time, and we're going to actually have to go manage that, and he's going to be somebody that we probably know where he is before the ball snapped on every play. How many of those are there in this league this year? I mean, if Harold Perkins is lined up outside of our tackle on the line of scrimmage in 3rd and 8, like, yeah, that at that point in time, but he's not going to be there on every down. So do you count him? I'm going to know where Shamar Stewart is before every snap on every play because he can wreck your game plan. And if Nick Scorton is what all these draft analysts are saying that they think he is, that's going to be a real problem because one of the two is probably going to get favorable matchups a lot of the time. But I don't think Auburn has that guy. To be honest with you, I don't know if Alabama has that guy yet. And again, I'm not saying they don't. But if they do, who is it? Because Jaheim Otis is not really that guy. Tim Smith hasn't been that guy. Keenum played good football last year, but he's not that guy. And I'm talking about your Quinnen Williams, Jonathan Allen, just there's nothing you can do about it. And I don't know if we have a lot of those guys in the league this year. So does that mean offensive lines are going to be even that much better? Does that mean more ground and pound type football will be more successful? Are there going to be less sacks? Are mobile quarterbacks less important? I don't know the answers to these, but it's a little bit of a concern because there have been a lot of teams for a lot of years that have been able to lean on a guy or two up front because they were that problematic. And not many teams feel like they have that individual. That's why it makes me feel a little bit better about South Carolina's defense, Tennessee's defense. They have real defensive tackle numbers. And just because they're not first-round draft picks, like some guy got mad at me on my show this week, and he was commenting something on the YouTube about South Carolina's D-line can't hold Tennessee's jock. And okay, but I've complimented Tennessee for having really good defensive tackle depth, like 4 guys that have really played and played good football. Well, South Carolina has 4 or 5 also that have been around, that have played, are battle-tested, have played good football that you can rely on. Relied upon defensive tackle depth. It's not something a lot of teams in this league have. So when I see it, I'm going to elevate you just a little bit because I know how important it is.
Deion Walker, Mykel Williams were the only 2 guys I thought you could probably include in that discussion, but they're both trying to do kind of different things a little bit.
How many career sacks you think Mykel Williams has?
Mykel Williams has what, 6 career sacks? It's not
maybe.
It's low.
We looked it up a couple months ago, and like no one on the show could believe that it was as low as it was. Now, doesn't mean he didn't affect other games and do other great things. He has, but for all the hype, you would think the production had at least been a little bit higher at other times. But he can be that guy. Yes, Deion Walker can absolutely be that guy as well. It's just, man, I'm used to having 15, 17 of those guys in the league.
Yeah, and I think both of them too are trying to assert themselves more as pass rushers, and some of the tweaks, right. Williams with position change, some of the weight loss stuff with Deion Walker, that's definitely part of it, and some of the unknowns. Speaking of Kentucky, we'll close with this one. You're going to be on the call first week, your week 1 game, Southern Miss, Kentucky, SEC Saturday night. What are you looking to see with this new Kentucky offense, a group that I'm sure you probably haven't talked about a whole lot this offseason? We actually, McElroy and I spent some time this morning talking about them because we were talking about impact transfers, which I think is a fascinating discussion because it's easy, one, to just say quarterbacks. That's where a lot of people are going to go. And then 2, I think it's easy to go to guys that are going to put up numbers. So if you're just talking first-year guys that are coming in, like for me, Juice Wells. Okay, if he's healthy, he's putting up good numbers. He just is. He's Rocket Sanders. If he's healthy, he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot at South Carolina. But it's those other guys
that may not stuff the stat books that could impact some things. Kentucky is, Chip Trainum's got the busted up hand. Is that going to affect him early? I don't really know, but I want to see how he looks. I want to see Bush Hamden's offense. I want to see most importantly, and this is where I get sideways with some people because I think you can learn things from spring games. A lot of people will tell you, you don't ever get nothing. Well, take the Mississippi State spring game that we worked. I came away very impressed and feeling really good about some things because I wanted to see Blake Shapen operate the offense. What does that mean? Are you getting in and out of your fakes? Are your reads clean? Is the ball out on time? Are you panicking in the pocket? Are you throwing balls into the stands? Unintentionally, because he threw some there intentionally, which I thought was great and what he needed to do. And the difference between he and the other quarterbacks that came in looked totally different. I want to see Vandergriff operate that offense. And that does not mean 40 of 44 for 358 yards and 5 touchdowns. It could be 12 of 16 for 192 yards and a touchdown. But yet you were good on third down. You weren't a lot of third and longs. Threw the ball away when you needed to, didn't panic in the pocket, ball got out on time, catchable footballs to the receivers. That's the kind of things that I want to see. Dumas Johnson in that defense, I'm really interested to see because I think we're not talking enough about how great of a player at times he has been in this league. He can be a dynamo at linebacker, and he'll have good protection up front. Kentucky's another one of those teams that has maybe a little more D-tackle depth than people are giving them credit for. With Weaver back on the edge, veteran-laced secondary. I want to see the operation of the offense, exactly what the offense looks like. And then I want to see how disruptive that front is and sort of how they play with really 2 good linebackers right behind them and a group of DBs that should know where to be at almost all times. So that's a team, and you kind of mentioned it. I hadn't talked a lot about them, but that's another one of those teams that we should have mentioned earlier with the Auburns and the Tennessees and the Missouris. Even though their ceiling might not be as high, there are paths for Kentucky to have a season much better than what a lot of people are imagining.
Yeah, the Matt Jones clip that went semi-viral in college football circles where he's sitting there and he's like explaining the path for Kentucky to go 9-3 and to be able to make the playoff. You could.
Problem is Matt's been doing that for 18 years now,
right?
So maybe 28 years now.
He's been right twice,
but he's right this year for sure. I mean, there is an opportunity for them to put together a pretty good season. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it is kind of fun that a lot of teams can do that, and a lot of teams in the SEC specifically can have some of that hopium, if you will, optimism, whatever the case may be. At least be talking about getting into the playoff instead of maybe we can make a run, get to a New Year's Six Bowl or something like that. It definitely changes the conversation. Cole, this has been great. Safe travels with everywhere you're going to be going this season. We'll, I'm sure, catch up at some point midseason.
We'd love to. I always appreciate you having me on. Great conversation, man.
All right, pitch me, Will. We are doing why 2024 will be the best season ever. And look, I think I go into every season hoping that it's going to be the best season ever. I have a different perspective, not having a dog in the fight. So I interpret best to be most entertaining. And yeah, there's a part of me that just hopes it's 2007 all over again. But I do think...
Me too, buddy.
Yeah, you do. I think
chaos ensues and a 2-loss LSU team wins the title. That actually sounds like a dream.
Why is it that LSU national championships are always like the best season ever, even for people like myself? Because the other example I was going to bring up was 2019.
Yep.
I love 2019, and probably the fact that the pandemic happened right after it made us more so like, oh my God, I just want to be back in a college football stadium. I don't want to hear about, like if we're going to have a season or how this is going to go. But 2019 was awesome for us personally, just because of the opportunities that we got that year to be able to go to a lot of different games. And it was awesome kind of from start to finish with the cool experiences. The SEC network experience that we got to be able to spend a day with those guys was something that I look back on and really appreciate. But yeah, the best season ever title usually is associated with team success.
Well, and then also 2011, you got game of the century and a team not crossing the 50-yard line in a natty. So every time LSU is at least eligible for the national championship game, you get a funny result. Now it could be LSU smacking a team that they were like that was supposed to be a great team or coming back, or it could be LSU, in fact, just going, maybe we're going to do everything differently. We're going to 40 chess ourselves. So yeah, I think that, but it's cool though that more teams like that, get a chance. Cause I actually never thought about that where it's like, well, my team with the 2 loss seasons got a chance to play for a title. Nobody else has ever had that in history. So like, it probably is better for everyone else.
That's changing this year. That will change
exactly.
this year with the 2 loss team playing for a national championship, and not like a how would you say an SID going back through the course of history and finding an example of a 2 loss team that actually deserved to win a national championship and then trying to claim it, decades.
So most
after.
SEC titles.
So most SEC
most SEC national championships before 2000 is just some dude at a room just being like, I did it. I won a national championship.
Yes,
I wonder if they pop champagne when they make up a championship.
I would. You kidding me? I actually, you know what?
Another one.
I kind of am jealous that so many people have done this and have done this exercise, because that's the type of thing I would love to just be able to spend a day looking at and just handing out national championships. Like the OG national title would, the name itself would pop. Like it absolutely would. And it makes it sound like, oh, you actually should have been the national champion, but you weren't, and you're slighted. So unfortunately, too many people already beat me to that. But yeah, national championships don't necessarily have to be the sole reason that a year is the best ever. But like I said before, I think with everybody talking about how new this is and this isn't the sport I grew up watching, I would get some positive vibes, because college football is starting 2 days from now. 2 days from now, Will. Crazy thought. All right. Let's start with the ones that we got from the Saturday Down South Instagram. Let's start with this one from dham13. dham says I think that's dham.
See, I could have just read these, but that would deny the listeners the pure pleasure of having you sound out Instagram usernames, which are all lowercase. They're all a disaster. I have to stare at them all day, but watching someone do it blind is incredible content.
It's a difficult thing to do. Go try it yourself if you think it's easy. dham13 says more teams will be in the race for the national championship as the season winds down. Yeah, very true. And for all those who dislike the 12-team playoff, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I was fine with 4. But if we get into situations where we have 20 teams thinking that they are worthy of getting into the playoff and having a path to the national championship, the arguments are going to be awesome. I mean, they will be petty. They will be confusing. And maybe you will long for a time in which we didn't have this many teams involved in an argument when you're like 8-3, but you play a marquee game, rivalry weekend or something like that. But it does have potential to drive everybody totally bananas. And yeah, that makes for a more interesting discussion. So I'm not necessarily going to say that that's a thing that's going to hold this back from being the best season ever.
Yeah, I think so. I think we both are people that just kind of have these very like niche sports takes, which if you stare at sports as long as either of us do, you just end up with them. And one of mine is like the bubble watch in the tournament has just never been that interesting to me, because I know very, very rarely have these teams ever actually done anything. Like best case scenario, they'll upset a team that was supposed to do something, but they don't actually do anything themselves outside of like the Kimba team. But we all kind of knew what that was when it was happening. Like once they went on the run to take them out of the bubble conversation, they were already in. There was no bubble conversation about that team. They had an AQ bid. So point being, like, yeah, I have kind of believed that. Now on the other side of that, you have the greatest postseason performance in NFL history, which is actually Joe Flacco's 2013 season. If you don't believe me, look it up. He has the record for the most touchdown passes in a postseason and no turnovers, I believe, or at least no picks. So like every once in a while you get that. Football's a little bit different because of the way it's set up. So like I will say this though, yeah, I think that while we will get lots of hopeful teams be like, oh man, Iowa, we have a shot. They're always my example because they're always right there. But we're also going to get these like 3-loss Alabama, Ohio State teams that their fans are obnoxious online. Like the committee wants the revenue, so they're going to put us in, and that's going to be terrible.
You think Alabama and Ohio State are going to have 3 losses apiece?
They could one day in the near future. if there's some type of an attack on Columbus, perhaps. That's probably what it would take for that economy to dip that low. Somebody gets a sanction. But yeah, I think that's like kind of the interesting part of it is like I saw somebody say, I don't even know who it was, but it was like a guy I liked on Twitter yesterday. He was like, oh, well, if Kansas State has to go to one of these weird bowl games, they're going to get outdrawn 2-1. And Kansas State fans were like, you clearly don't know Kansas State. And it's like, this is the conversations we're going to end up having whenever the big teams are like, we're going to outdraw you, so you don't deserve to be there.
Look, all of that is more discussion. It's more eyeballs. It's more people that are interested coast to coast. I'm here for national interest in the sport, and I will sift through. I will try and do my best to decide what's worth my time, what's not worth my time. But you know what, man? I'm here for it. I'm here for the discussion.
Agreed.
All right, Nothing Finer Pod. Shout out Emery. Shout out Michael Dark. They were kind enough to be able to have me on this week. I went on with them Sunday nights for our usual. I think we've done it, 3 consecutive years of we preview each conference championship, how it's going to play out. We just tell each other that we're all wrong and we're all stupid. It's very, very fun. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's always a great time. Everybody should go listen to Nothing Finer Pod. So I'm guessing, this is very much an Emery take that I'm perfectly fine with. When Michigan has to vacate the 2023 season, it's Georgia's opportunity to three-peat. This is incorrect. Georgia could be on the table for a four-peat.
There we go, Emery. Come on, man. This would be a four-peat.
Yes, because if Michigan has to vacate, I think the natural response would be Washington national champs. Mm-hmm. I'm going to find a way to give out like 6 or 7 national championships if that happens. Georgia would be worthy of one of those national championships, an OG national championship. I would give them one. So 4-peat.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, not to get into the minutiae of this, but I think that we had all just been conditioned to accept that nothing was going to happen with that. I saw that Harbaugh, I think, got a show cause, which has no teeth because he's in the NFL. I mean, do you think he would have gotten a show cause if he'd stayed at Michigan?
No.
Exactly. So like nothing's gonna happen to them. We do that from the beginning. We felt a little hopeful that this team of logo wearing guys were actually gonna see justice, but they are they've already been given the front line of the video game. They've been given 5-star status. Like we've now been reminded how many Michigan alums are in our lives.
I would give Florida State a national championship. I would. Let's see who else could be worthy.
Wait, which one?
The last year's national championship.
Well, they played Georgia in the Natty game.
Good point. All right, Georgia still gets the national championship.
Players are gonna be furious if
you mean to tell me I set out a national championship game?
National championship game.
God, why did they tell me? All right, TJ23450. Thanks, TJ. A lot of numbers there, man. TJ says 12-team playoff, new conferences. I think that's it. The new conference part is confusing but fun. It is still weird if you're like me and you will sometimes, I'll look at the SEC tab on my Yahoo Sports app or like on ESPN to like go through and see what games are on specific times and stuff like that. And if you separate it into conference and you're like, oh yeah, Oklahoma's going to be on SEC Network. Like what?
Yep.
Oklahoma is playing Temple, and that's what? It's just so strange. There are going to be so many moments like that where I'm admitting I'm going to make mistakes. I will say probably SMU is still in the AAC. I will say Cal is still in the Pac-12, RIP. Stanford, still in the Pac-12. I will have these moments in which you think to yourself, did Connor just have a brain fart? Yes. I will be full of brain farts. I promise you that.
Yeah, there will be plenty of brain flatulence happening. I think the thing that's made it easy for me with Oklahoma is that, look, Josh Heupel is now a 2-time SEC legend, right? He's an SEC legend for getting a coffee table book made at Tennessee, right? He's already had an all-time great season. And he won a national championship and Heisman at Oklahoma. So he's a 2-time SEC legend right there.
It's a good point. It really is a good point. Not many. Well, actually, in the transfer portal era, I guess there are more guys that can be 2-time SEC legends. But at his time, to be able to say that is really quite the feat. It is.
Von Miller, SEC legend.
Who could forget?
Let's do it. The Big Ten will.
If SEC Network does not put on a greatest Von Miller games and like SEC Classics or something like that, they've been doing it wrong because the Big Ten Network's been doing that for a long time.
Yep.
Tanner Starr says 2024 will be the best season ever because October 12th is the single best slate of games this sport has ever seen. If you're still not convinced, let me remind you that we are about to witness home playoff games for the first time ever in college football. I rest my case. Home playoff games are going to be great. They're going to be fun. They're going to feel so unique in this sport. They really will. Like it is going to be something that I think even the biggest 14 playoff, I'll even take it a step further. The biggest BCS enthusiasts can still watch all of these games played at home venues and go, man, I'm not getting off my couch. This is awesome. This is electric. This feels significant. And you can still feel like I wish it was the sport that I grew up watching. That's fine. You could feel both of those two things. But yeah, the home playoff games, just give us some good venues. Give us some really good venues. I was trying to think about it. What would be the most ideal places for first round home playoff games? And I actually think like Penn State would be incredible. I've very frequently spoken about the James Franklin frustration I have, and everybody knows that. But seeing that place just decked out for a playoff game, maybe get a little snow involved, would be tremendous. It really would. I think getting to see playoff game in a place, I don't know, like just not USC, just not USC. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. Just not Miami. I don't need to see a playoff game in Miami. Give me the fans that are going to show up that are going to be absolutely awesome. And I'm not saying there has to be a threat of snow. I'm not saying that. Okay, don't get it twisted. You still have great venues.
Threat of snow.
I don't need that. I don't need that. Okay.
You've escaped the snow. You're not threatening people with snow.
Yeah, maybe a little sprinkle in the air, Camp Randall, something like that. And that's the type of stuff that would be fun to see. Just variety within the playoff. Utah would be an awesome venue for a college football playoff game. I would love to be able to see that. The list is significantly longer for the teams I'd want to see as opposed to the teams I wouldn't want to see.
Yeah, I think that you really hit on something earlier that I don't know why, but I haven't considered it because I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, this whole playoff thing is a fight between traditionalists and kind of like the money hungry executives, where in reality, it's a fight between the traditionalists and new fans and casual fans, right? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, look, if you're going to watch Connor Cook versus Brock Osweiler in an NFL playoff game and pretend like that matters, which we all did at the time, and that was back when I was super locked into the NFL, we saw that. We saw TJ Yates start a game.
Yates of hell.
Joe Flacco started. Who was talking to me yesterday? They were like, somebody was like not too into football, and they were like, where's Joe? Joe Flacco is still in the league. I was like, brother, he started a playoff game last year. And people watch that and we're like, hey, this means something. And so that's the thing casual football fans love is a playoff atmosphere, some storylines that you can put up. We don't, we're going to have to dig kind of deep into the thing. We're not going to do the draft thing about the crazy storylines that are sad. We got to find positive storylines to talk about why it's a big deal to go into, like you said, Happy Valley and watch James Franklin immediately get fired after not throwing one single deep pass in the loss. So I actually think, though, I'm not kidding about that. I'm excited to see home playoff atmospheres. I think that would be fire. I think that it's going to be interesting to see. I talked about Kansas State, some of those environments where, will Miami fans show up? Miami fans are known to leave playoff games, not show up for them, right? And so that's the thing. What will these different atmospheres be for playoffs? For a night, can Lincoln, Nebraska beat Tiger Stadium? Maybe so. I don't know. Now that they got to get
settle down. Let's settle down. Yeah.
You're right. That's all I'm saying. They got to get there first. But there's a lot of one game atmospheres. Iowa would be a nice one too, right? Because they have imagine the wave during a playoff game. That would be electric.
That would be.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Dang. That'd be fantastic. Look, man, I am looking forward to it, and I think that element alone will draw in some of the people that have really resisted and have said, look, this is just going to be the death of the sport. Clayton Tyler Lavelle says, because Tennessee fans will declare preseason national champs and then go 8-5 as usual, therefore everyone wins, and it's the best season ever.
8-5, brother. Where you been? They have been 8-5, but 4 or 5 times I remember.
Look, if that happens every year, then every season's the best season ever.
Yeah,
according to that take. So I'm just saying, a lot of people would probably be that is always probably something that I don't factor into it. When you can be great and your rival sucks and you just get to that trash talk almost doesn't even exist. Maybe it's better if your rival like has a little bit of hope and it's 2022 Georgia and Tennessee's number one in the playoff poll and stuff like that. And then Georgia just gets to humiliate them. Maybe like it's a little bit better when your rival is actually like somewhat good in that way, as opposed to just a disaster or something. But I mean, I guess that's the point, is that, Clayton's saying Tennessee's got hope coming into the year. And if they were terrible, everybody would love that.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point, where it's like you always want to be just a little bit better than your rival. Like if your rival's trash, you want to be trash plus. If your rival is mid, you want to be mid plus. So yeah, I think that's a good point too. We've talked about the rivalry games maybe not meaning as much, but we get to see rival games in the postseason too, which is going to be fire. We'll get a couple of those.
Definitely. Let's end with these two. Michael Dark says, there are so many reasons. One, the Big 12 has the most parity of any Core 4 conference, America's conference, some would say. Yes, we definitely say that. Texas going 8-4, while Oklahoma has a better season, will make their fan base spontaneously combust. That would. Yes, that definitely would. Georgia 3-peat is still on the table if Michigan has to vacate the title. 4-peat, guys. 4-peat is on the table for Georgia.
Yes. Come on, man.
Come on. Which program? Number 4 is which program will be the new boogeyman now that Saban has retired? We'll get to see all of those teams in the playoff. Number 5, chance at a Cinderella team to make the college football playoff. I'm in graduate school at Georgia Southern. I'll definitely be paying more attention to them if they are alive for a playoff spot late in the season. Shout out Clay Helton. That was my inclusion, not his. Number 6, I can't wait for Lou Holtz to drop another video making fun of Ryan Day when Ohio State loses to Michigan again. That's pretty good. Number 7, all of the new rivalries that we don't know we needed, and the return of Texas A&M. Texas, yep, great point. And number 8, maybe the most important of all, no more Gary calling SEC games. Forgot about that. Definitely, that's one of the things that has slipped my mind. The fact that we don't have SEC on CBS, it brings so much sadness to me, even as someone that did not necessarily grow up with it in the same way that many of you all listening did. But we do have this thing, this like little stuffed animal that I think I talked about it before. My sister-in-law got for Claire, and it's the elephant, and it does the CBS jingle, and it's incredible. It's incredible. It's a little stuffed animal. I put it right on the changing table when Claire's being like fussy or something like that. I just turn it on. It's just SEC on CBS, and I just go right back there. I'm like, oh, you're still fussy. I better hit it again.
Yeah. Of course it is an elephant that plays the CBS jingle, isn't it?
It's a good point.
Goes to the point of why, what? Maybe we've been romanticizing this a little bit. You know what? Because I grew up with it, but let's be honest here. We were all kind of ready for Vern to go, and I think Gary has kind of gotten to that point. So this has not been objectively, like if you were like, hey, I'm going to show a space alien college football, the games are good, the theme song is good, the actual quality of the broadcast was really not that good. I would not say CBS is the best at doing any sport, honestly. I think that, you could argue, is Gus Johnson CBS?
Gus Johnson is not. He is Fox. He used to be CBS.
Right. Like I remember he's had some iconic calls on CBS, but actually, now that I think about this, I do not like, because it's the thing, like when you have Gary, you're like, all right, well, let's give him the respect. But if you're like, oh, I actually kind of have to deal with this, it's like, wait, I'm actually excited to see what a fresh set of eyes that are appreciative of the SEC and not doing the whole like, I'm just going to show up and like figure it out,
I think actually CBS, for the point that Gary brought up on this show, the thing, like, you can hate Gary, and Gary's like, fine. Like, you can dislike me. That's perfectly fine. But the point he brought up about how good the production crew is with some of the replays and stuff like they get, and some of the moments, like the play, like right before kick six happens, where they're able to get like the 1 second down, and like some of the little intricacies, stuff
they're
like
able
that.
To stop the clock for Nick Saban. That's why he gave him an elephant that pushes the. Okay, I see.
Don't do that. But yeah, I will say I am still going to miss it, despite the fact that obviously everybody has their frustrations with Gary. Yeah. Okay, let's end with this one from Chris Tapley. Chris Tapley says, because Stone Cold said so.
That's top tier.
Is that our winner? Michael's our winner. Michael gave us an 8-prong answer.
Yeah, Michael nailed that.
That's the winner.
That. Yeah.
Honorable mention is definitely because Stone Cold said so. Can we get back to a place where that's just an answer that we default to? Because I'm struggling to come up with a default answer to questions that I do not want to answer. And I could just simply say because Stone Cold said so. But I worry that as a dad, there's a very fine line with saying things that your kid will one day say and then just use against you. And I'm very worried that Claire is getting perceptive enough where she's going to start to absorb that. And then I'm going to have answer to that of like, because Stone Cold said so. And then I'm going to be like, well, I have nobody to blame but myself.
Well, the beautiful thing is like Stone Cold is now like just a wholesome cat dad on Instagram. So as long
Sure.
as you don't like show clear highlights of him chugging beers, which she'll get around to in time, right?
She will.
He might just be the man on the Instagram with the cat, so that's fine.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Great pitches. Thank you to everybody that submitted them. We have football next week. Plan for next week. Like I said, we're going to have that pod that's going to come out. I think the plan is for that to be able to come out like early Wednesday afternoon, where we're going to preview everything. We've got Marty Smith coming up, so it'll be great stuff with him. And we're going to have all of our matchup breakdowns for those core 4 matchups among SEC teams. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ Vera, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.